Hey, it's Dr. Jack Wolfson here, the paleocardiologist, and this is the Healthy Heart Show. And I want to welcome Dr. Edward Group to the podcast and video. Dr. Ed, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
So Dr. Edward Group founded Global Healing Center in 1998 with the goal of providing the highest quality natural health information and products. He is world-renowned for his research on the root cause of disease. Under his leadership, Global Healing Center earned recognition as one of the largest natural and organic health resources in the world. Dr. Group is a veteran of the United States Army and has attended executive education programs at both Harvard and MIT business schools. He is a best-selling author and a frequent guest on radio and television programs, documentary films, and in major publications and in podcasts. And I've heard Dr. Ed speak before at California Jam and The Truth About Cancer and so many other places. And Dr. Ed, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
It's just a pleasure to be on your show and just get the information, out to people. So thank you for putting a podcast together, giving people the right information on your website, everywhere. It's the more people we can touch and the more people we can help, ultimately we can help change the world.
Well, you and I were talking about this before too, and it's it really is amazing the healthcare revolution that's on right now and how we're driving the market forces because of what our demands are, and by people like you putting out this information onto your website, all over social media, all over the internet. This is where the revolution's going on, right? It's the people taking it to the corporations.
I hear every single day that kids are watching their parents sick and unhealthy and dying, and their parents have watched their grandparents die on prescription medications or an unhealthy internal and external environment, what they're putting in their body and in the environment in which they live. And I think that, I watched both of my parents die in my 20s of cancer. And I think that it's starting to have an effect on people. And because of the internet and because so many people are coming forward, there's a positive revolution that's happening right now. And I even tell people, my employees and my kids, we are right now in the middle of a healthcare revolution, not only a healthcare revolution, but a revolution across the board for the earth itself. When the majority of the world's population becomes sick, the air is contaminated, the water is contaminated, and the food is contaminated, the earth is just as sick as the people on the earth. And so finding out the secrets, uncovering the secrets to health, cleansing the body, putting good things in your system, cleansing your environment. I mean, it's really, if you think about it, very simple. It's just the piece that's missing and the lack of information that's being taught out there is what's missing. I mean, people are still stuck in that fear-based model. A lot of people, although people are opening up and they're becoming more aware, a lot of people are still stuck in that fear-based, for the most part, allopathic system, which was what happened to me, when I wanted to become a heart surgeon, actually. And my dream was to become a heart surgeon. My dad was a PhD chemist for Exxon, so I got my first chemistry set when I was around 1. And it wasn't until I was about to start applying to medical school where I actually met somebody, and this was in the early 90s, by the way. There was no internet around. And he was doing a project on a research team from MD Anderson. That was right when MD Anderson was launching their CAM program, Complementary Alternative Medicine. And his job, this is how I ended up completely switching gears. And this is exactly what is happening today, which I'm really thankful for. And I think we all have a part to play in this role. I ended up talking to this guy, and I was brainwashed to think that natural medicine was witchcraft, that it doesn't work, that, essential oils are, of the devil, blah, 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 blah. And this guy started saying that he knew doctors that were underground and doctors were getting killed that he had interviewed, and that there were cures for every disease out there. And I was thinking, what in the world is this guy talking about? But this was something completely different than what I had been taught. And still talking about heart disease, he was saying, we were looking at how many people die and the leading causes of death each year, and cancer and heart disease and all these diseases. And he was saying, we don't even need these. We have cures for all of this stuff. And so I ended up getting on his research team and not ever applying and taking any tests for medical school, because I was blown away. We went around and talked to and had to find these doctors. And we interviewed them all, and we took all their records back, the ones that they were successful with. And we were looking at cancer, but what we found out was cancer was the hardest thing for these doctors to get rid of. But all these other conditions, heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, even autoimmune diseases, et cetera, they could easily get rid of all these. When we brought the research back and started to share this individual research, we were surrounded by guys in black suits. They took it all. We were issued a gag order. We were never to talk about any of this and never present any of this research to anybody. It was shocking for me. It was, by the way, I was followed around for close to 2 years in black vehicles. And it was at that point in time, I knew the threat to the pharmaceutical companies and what they were what they were telling us, what we could and what we couldn't do. But we had the solutions for every single disease. And that's what led me to go into chiropractic college and then start studying everything I can about detoxification and cleansing and really identifying the root cause of disease is what we did in our research.
One of the things that you talked about is that the fact that there are so many forces that are against us and against us getting that health and wellness message out there. And the internet is such a blessing in that sense that we are able to get that information. But I know we were talking before and you were telling me about your family's trip to Europe. And when you go through a trip to Europe, it is you realize that there are a lot of villains in the history of mankind. There are some really bad people that are out there. So it's no surprise to think there are bad people that are still around in our society whose only motives are power and profit and control. So it's no surprise to hear that when you guys were on to all that research and all those discoveries about what true health and wellness means, and even today, how there are some bad people that follow us around and make our lives miserable or worse. It is no surprise.
Well, one of the most powerful, you're right, the most powerful thing that we learned as we started evaluating we looked at hundreds of doctors, but there was a handful, maybe 10 or 15 that were doing basically the same thing. And they were using basically the same programs for every single disease, whatever it was, whether you came in with a headache, whether you came in with fibromyalgia, it didn't matter. But all of the most successful ones would tell us and explain to the patients that they would all start with evaluating the patient's lifestyle and where they live and what they're putting in their system. And they all told every single one of them that we all have a self-healing mechanism within us. And that is the most powerful healing agent that we have. More powerful than anything outside of us is what's in us. And the reason why our self-healing mechanism is so beat down is because of the toxins that we breathe in the air every single day, the toxins that we put in our body through the food every single day, the toxins that we consume through the water every day, the amount of stress that we're under, the exposure to electromagnetic altered, frequencies. I mean, the list goes on, and we identified probably about 50 or 60 medications and all these other things and vaccinations and all this stuff. But everybody has a tipping point. So if you're bringing in 500, this was what basically we would explain to people as the root cause of disease. Because if someone comes in and says, I have heart disease, I want you to cure me. Well, we would say, why do you have heart disease? Or why do you have cancer? And they would look at us and go, I don't know. Well, don't you need to understand why you have the disease first before you can understand how to get rid of the disease? And they were like, oh, yeah. So let us explain to you why the root cause of why you have disease.
Mm-hmm.
You're bringing in 1 million chemicals and toxins on a daily basis, and your body can only eliminate 500,000 chemicals and toxins on a daily basis. So you have an excess of 500,000 chemicals or toxins coming into your system every single day. So your body decides where to put all those extra toxins, because the liver gets completely wiped out within years. As a matter of fact, I would say 90% of the people right now on the planet only have 50% or less liver functionality. And so where's the body going to dump all these toxins? It dumps it in the cardiovascular system, and that causes heart disease and an imbalance. It dumps it in the liver, causes liver disease. It dumps it in the joints, that's arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
It dumps it in an area that it wants to wall off, which is cancer. I mean, the body doesn't want to damage everything, and that's kind of where your genetic background comes in, if your parents had heart disease or if your parents had cancer or whatever. So it was a very simple process. It's like if you tell people the root cause of where all these chemicals and toxins are entering their system, and then you cleanse them out, because we found that, and just like you found, that's why you support gut health so much, is that it doesn't matter what disease you have. It all starts in the gut. Whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's cancer, it doesn't matter. Because how are the chemicals and toxins going to get in your body? Okay, they can get in through your skin, but we've only identified maybe close to 5% of the total amount of chemicals and toxins that you're exposed to on a daily basis enter through your skin. 95% of them are going to come in through your gut lining. That's why there's such a big link to gut disease, liver disease, and then the liver has to process them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by identifying the root cause of all the chemicals and the toxins and eliminating them from coming into your system, and then cleaning up your external environment. We used to go into individuals' homes all the time, and just like the doctors did a long time ago, which all those books have been burned on fasting and intermittent fasting and cleansing and all that stuff from the 1800s on. Now we're starting to see more of them pop up online again. But the basis of being able to kick in the body's self-healing mechanism is to always start. And this is why all of the doctors that we identified that had over a 60% success rate with cancer and probably close to 90% or above with any other degenerative health condition, they were all doing the same thing. Number one, they were educating the patient on the root cause of their illness. Number two, they were going to the individual's home. That's what we did when we had our cancer clinic before we got raided and shut down.
Yep.
They were going to the patient's home, because you can learn so much about somebody just in their living environment. You would see mold everywhere or whatever. The third thing they would do is the first part of their treatment program would always be gut. They would clean the gut extremely well and then repopulate it with good probiotics. By that time, the individual patient was also eating very healthy and eating the right type of food.
So tell me what you mean though by cleaning out the gut. I mean, so cleaning out the gut, detoxification. What does that mean for you and your program?
Well, when we started studying and trying to figure out what the best way to clean the gut is, we ended up looking at some of the lost files of Nikola Tesla. Now Tesla, before he died, he was a visionary, as everybody knows, but he had this vision in the future. Not too many people know about this. The only way you know about it is Tesla's understudy was a guy named Arthur Matthews. Arthur Matthews' understudy was a guy named George Freibot. George Freibot's understudy was a guy named Larry Royce. And then I was mixed in that into that group too, because part of my passion as a young person, as a scientist, was looking into quantum energy and all kinds of other stuff. So I would get visions from the time I was, 10 about all these weird things, technologies and stuff. So what led us to that is that Tesla said that what's going to destroy the population in the future is going to start in the gut. So before he died, he wanted to develop something that people could use 2 or 3 times a week to keep their gut clean. Well, he looked at all the different herbs, cascara, senna, all that, and you can use them for a short period of time. But in today's society, people are eating a bunch of crap all day long, every day. and what our research has shown us is that foods can stay in the system for 72 hours. The proteins turn putrefactic, the carbohydrates ferment, and the fats turn rancid. So it almost like you need to get that out of your system as fast as you can. So he said the only way that people are going to be able to do that and heal the bowel is to develop a reactive oxygen compound that people could take. And because most of the chemicals and toxins are positively charged, and because most of the bacteria and fungus and everything, the negative is positively charged, the only thing that he said that would save the people and the planet later on and save gut is to develop a reactive oxygen species, oxygen-based intestinal cleanser that people could take. And when it starts to release this monatomic oxygen, it grabs the positive and it actually turns the solid matter into a liquid or a gas form. So George Freibot developed a product called Homozone, and then we've been working on, we were working on the formula as well. And so that was the first step of, gut health first. And that was the only thing that we found that people can take on a regular basis. Now, a lot of practitioners use their own gut formula, like you have many gut products and probiotics. And then in between, they use the oxygen. So what they would do is they'll put them on their good gut recovery program. And then in between, maybe have them do an oxygen-based colon cleanse, once a week or twice a week. So what happens is they never get in a state to where their intestinal lining is going to be damaged because they're taking herbs too long of a period of time, or they're able to continually clean, and they're getting the extra oxygen in their system, and they're neutralizing the chemicals and the toxins instead of actually just doing basically like a fiber. So many practitioners out there have their own gut health programs, have their own probiotics, but just supplement with an oxygen-based cleanser to chew away and melt away all that compaction that's in there in the small intestine and the large intestine.
Okay. So, I'll ask you for your contact info to share with the audience at the end. So where would someone get a product like you're talking about, something that really, with that negative charge that helps, goes after all the positive charges that are there from all of our digestion and all the bacteria and parasites and fungus? Where do we go to find something that generates those reactive oxidative, species as you talk about?
Oxy powder. It's the only one out there right now with I'm not trying to give a plug to people, but we've tested the other so-called oxygen cleansers out there because it's becoming really popular, and people are just throwing stuff in there, but they don't release any oxygen. And I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go publish a bunch of stuff out there saying all these other companies, here's the results, that they're not producing oxygen, because I'm just not like that. But the oxy powder, we can send you the studies from Sam Houston State University, which show that it still releases oxygen 18 hours later into your system. Wow. I shouldn't say oxygen, because oxygen is O2. Reactive oxygen species would be O1 or O3 or O4, which is something that's very, very electronegative. That's going to grab something that's harmful in your system. So yes, they can go to globalhealingcenter.com and they can buy the oxy powder right through there if they want.
So is this something, I guess, that would be an alternative, and certainly something easier than if someone was talking about doing any kind of other ozone therapies? Would that be along that same line? If people are talking about ozone for a variety of different health complaints, certainly in the cardiovascular space, is this an easier way to get it with the oxy powder?
I am a big proponent of ozone, especially ozone gas therapy for cardiovascular, for anything for that matter, even hydrogen peroxide therapy. A lot of people do it at home with 35% food grade and just put a few drops in their water. It's not going to be as strong and as effective of going with ozone gas directly into the bloodstream, or doing maybe an anal insufflation of ozone. Okay. But because there's so much stuff always in the bowel, and a lot of colon hydrotherapists use it as well, because believe it or not, and I love colon hydrotherapy, but most of the stuff is in the small intestine. I mean, you got 25 feet of small intestine. You only have 7 feet of large intestine. By that time it gets down there, there's really not a lot of toxic buildup in the colon anyway. So you have, if you stretch the intestinal lining out and you cut it open, it's the surface area of a tennis court. So you can imagine if you just had a tiny layer of dust all along a tennis court and you sweep it up into the middle, that's a lot of stuff that you're putting in the system, you know, on a regular basis. And that you can contribute to all disease to the amount of toxic buildup from the sugar. I mean, I know you talk about this all the time in your book and stuff. It's just all in the diet and the gluten and the GMO foods and the artificial sweeteners and the this and the that. So eliminating all that, but you still have a lot of people that you have to take baby steps with, you know, and by the reason why intestinal cleansing works so good is because all that stuff doesn't stay in the system for a long period of time, because then you have massive toxic overload. And that's why I was saying earlier why nobody's liver is really working or functioning. And that leads me into the stage 2 of what these doctors and what we've all come to realize is one simple process that can heal any disease. After the education and after the colon or the intestinal health program, then we always, and these doctors always moved them on to liver and gallbladder cleansing. And that goes back, you know, ages as well. Hulda Clark was really big into liver and gallbladder cleansing. We've done close to probably 3 million liver and gallbladder cleanses on people, and we've looked at the statistics. And we know now, after evaluating so many liver cleanses, that each liver cleanse only cleans about 15% of the liver. And that's only if you do. There's a lot of programs out there. Most of them are fairly the same. But the ones that where you drink the olive oil at the end, you really need that. Olive oil is one of the key components to cleansing and purging the liver and the gallbladder, because it sucks all those chemicals and toxins into little balls, and then you flush them out the next day. And that is really the key to having successful liver and gallbladder cleanses. And we have thousands of reviews from people that have had different positive results doing liver cleansing. We've had even a guy that had 4-stage cancer that was given 2 weeks to live. And I'm telling you this also because it goes into heart health.
Yeah.
All this that we're talking about right now will heal any heart condition. It will heal any heart condition. It doesn't matter what it is. Especially the liver. We've never had anybody in thousands upon thousands of cases with high blood pressure that their blood pressure didn't fall back to normal after an intestinal cleanse and one liver cleanse. Because think of the liver, when it's so congested, it's like an oil filter on your car, that the blood, literally, the liver has massive amounts of stones. And you're seeing non-fatty liver disease in children. I mean, it is an epidemic right now, liver disease. When the liver gets so congested with all those stones and fat and everything, the heart has to pump harder and it has to pump faster. So what do? They go in and they get diagnosed with high blood pressure, but it's really not high blood pressure. It's all contributed to the bowel, and it's contributed to the liver not functioning correctly. And I'm just telling you what I've found. I mean, you're definitely the expert on heart. I'm not saying I'm an expert at all, but I can say that, 10,000, 15,000 people with high blood pressure that have done 1 to 3 liver cleanses and fixed their gut, their high blood pressure is gone.
Right.
And not only that, most of the other conditions. So we finally realized that that most people are functioning at around 30%, that are over 30 are functioning at about 30% liver capacity. And the strange thing is there's really no blood test, right, that can test for liver functionality. I mean, you have the GGT, you have ALT, AST, but there's nothing that tests, on purpose, by the way, on purpose, if you notice this, right?
Yeah, right.
There's no test that tests for congestion in the liver, stones in the liver, and how good the detoxification pathways are working. There are some more advanced ways that you can look at that, but not easily, and not something that 99% of the doctors are doing. And that's set that way on purpose because they don't want, they know they're putting them on medications, which are causing more damage to the liver and more damage to the gut.
Right.
right?
Well, when people talk about high cholesterol, they're, obviously that's such a, big buzzword, the cholesterol, villain that it is. And we never really stop to consider. And you're right. I ask people, why is your cholesterol high? And then you can march that back to why, the body is not making mistakes. It's just reacting to its environment. So cholesterol production from the liver in excess is because of liver and total body dysfunction. And then on the flip side, if your liver is so congested and so toxic, you cannot clear out those old LDL and HDL particles, which then continue to circulate around. They become oxidized. They're taken up by the immune system. And then when that happens, immune system dysfunction, and now you develop disease and plaque rupture and subsequent heart attack and or death. So I think you're right, that liver health and liver detoxification and cleansing is so fundamental to anybody with high cholesterol, high blood pressure, whatever label the medical doctors want to give it. Of course, it's about that, detoxification protocol. And I think you're right as far as, making sure that people, they stop the toxins from coming in, open up those detox pathways through urine and through bowel. And then you're right. So what you're saying is after you've stopped the onslaught and you've opened up those liver and or those bowel and bladder pathways, now we're going to hone in on the liver. And then you're talking about specific detoxification products and suggestions to cleanse out that liver.
So we've modified, we looked at every single herb. We talked to all these doctors that were having good success rates, what they had used, what worked, what didn't work, what helps dissolve the stones in the liver, what kills the liver flukes, like Hulda Clark's research. She was really, really, really big on liver cleanses. And I'd mentioned, just to finish my thoughts on the guy that had 4-stage cancer, so I don't forget, he was sent home to die, 2 weeks left to live. Somebody told him that his liver was so bad he needed to cleanse it. We didn't find out later, but he ended up ordering 3 liver cleanse kits from us. It takes about 5 or 6 days to do one liver cleanse the right way. He did the first one. He waited a day or two, started the second one, did the second one. Now 2 weeks were up and he wasn't dead. So he still had one liver cleanse to go, but he decided to order an additional 3 liver cleanse programs. He did the final liver cleanse. He was still alive after the 3rd week, which he wasn't supposed to be. By that time, the other ones came in and he kept doing the same thing. He did 26 liver and gallbladder cleanses in a row. That's the only thing he did.
Wow.
The only thing he did.
Mm-hmm.
He went back in and his cancer was gone.
Wow.
So you know this, and many doctors know this, about how important it is. Here's the thing. I still talk to doctors, and I still hear from individuals that are being seen by naturopathic doctors and physicians and chiropractors all the time. And they're not taking 2 steps backwards before they move forward. You know what I mean? And this was when we were talking to these doctors, they were like, look, I had 600 supplements in my clinic when I first started, because even when you're going through the natural way to heal things, you're still taught to give something for a symptom. Look at prescriptions for nutritional healing, or look at all this, and you're still like, oh, if you have this, take this. But we're missing that whole part. We're missing that whole, the root cause area, and why you need to, sure, you can take that stuff and sure, it might work a little bit, but if you were to go to the root cause and you were to start with the education, and then you were to go into intestinal re-health or reprogramming, and then, fix all the holes in the leaky gut, and then do your liver cleansing and everything, then you're going to be actually absorbing those nutrients and those herbs and everything way, way better. So even when I teach physicians about how they can integrate different things in their system, I always say, look, whatever you're going to do for the patient, I always believe that every patient should be working with somebody, because they need to be educated by that person. All I'm saying is just take 2 steps back and start cleaning their intestines and repopulating their bowel. Then do a liver and gallbladder cleanse. And the next thing that we know for a fact, the next stage that we do after the liver and gallbladder cleanse is harmful organism cleanse, because we have to get rid of all that fungus in the body. We have to, about fungus and mold and heart disease and parasites and viruses and bacteria. if you're already how are you going to get to that if your bowel and your liver hasn't been done first? So then the third step that these doctors were using and that we used is a harmful organism cleanse. We got to get rid of all that stuff. Right now, there's an epidemic with fungus and candida and mold and pleomorphic organisms and all the stuff that they're creating and all the things you're getting through vaccines and Morgellons and this and that. So after the gut is clean, after the liver is back up above 80%, so you might need to just assume everybody that's sick, their liver is at 30%. So one liver cleanse is going to bring them to 45. The next liver cleanse is going to bring them to 60. The next liver cleanse is going to bring them to 75. Mm-hmm. So that's why we changed our program to where people need to do 3 liver cleanses, because one wasn't enough when we started looking at all the statistics over the last 20 years and looking at, million liver cleanses people have gone through, because you can learn so much just by evaluating data from the individual's mouth. That's why clinical trials and all this stuff really are not effective. I mean, think about it. If you were to do an accurate clinical trial, I'm talking accurate. I'm not saying they're useless, but wouldn't you need to clone 30 people or 60 people or 100 people that you have? Wouldn't you need to expose them to the same levels of stress every single day? Wouldn't you need to expose them to the same diet every single day?
It's very difficult. Yeah.
It's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
We live in a state right now where, with the parasympathetic and the sympathetic systems are completely out of whack. Everybody's living in a sympathetic state. You got high levels of cortisol. You got adrenal burnout. You got extra cardiovascular. Our cardiovascular system is working triple time, 10 times, what it should be having to work to get blood everywhere. It's all the small capillaries are being all clotted up everywhere with toxic buildup and residue. Oxygen content is super low in the cardiovascular systems these days because we're not breathing enough oxygen in the air. People aren't breathing right because they're in a sympathetic state. So
do you think people need to test for these toxins, pollutants, parasites? There's so many different companies now that are out there that are testing this stuff, and it's all very good. But then at the same point, could we just assume that if you do have some symptomatic disease or you've been identified with some medical condition, that you should go through this program anyways of just getting all the environmental toxins and pollutants and metals and whatnot, get it out of your life. You're going to cleanse and heal the bowel and make sure all those detox pathways are open. You're going to do a liver cleanse, and then pretty much everybody after that, let's just jump right into the parasite, fungal, bacterial cleansing process to get you where you need to be.
So if depending on that individual patient, a lot of practitioners want to have something to just say, hey, this is our starting point. That's why it's so important to spend a lot of time with the individuals and fill out a good health questionnaire, good history, what they have in their home, their job. A lot of people are exposed to stuff at their job and they don't even realize it. And if you want to do all that testing, that's fine. You don't have to. This is another scenario that we noticed happen multiple times. We actually did some testing on some individuals that came in that were sick. It was kind of a research study over the phone and when we had our clinic. I don't see patients anymore because I'm just too busy getting the word out. But we took them through a health questionnaire and then sat down with them, did a history, all the physical, everything, got a diagnosis, got, let's say, a differential diagnosis, maybe 2 or 3 things that patient had that we thought they had. We even ran some testing so we could confirm some of those. Then we ran them through all the cleanses. So we can talk about it, but after the harmful organism came the chemical and heavy metal cleanse. That's the one that we do last, because that's when you're pulling out the chemicals and the heavy metals, you want the liver and everything to be functioning. So that was the last one, the last step. We ran them through that one time. Then we went back as if they came in as a new patient, and we did a whole brand new history and everything on them. The strange thing was about 80% of the time, the symptoms that they had after they had finished cleansing were not the symptoms that they came in with. Now, what does that tell you?
Yep.
That tells you that 80% of the time patients are being misdiagnosed because they're only seeing the symptoms on the outside.
Yep.
Then you start peeling back that onion, and you start peeling back that onion, and you start getting to the root cause that didn't show up on the initial, but will show up because if you start cleansing them, well, like probably 60, 70% of their symptoms are going to go away right there because their self-healing mechanism has kicked in at this point. And now their body's able to focus on the things that it needs to focus on. You know, they're eating healthier, blah, blah, blah. And so a lot of their symptoms went away. And now you can start seeing maybe where these real imbalances are, these real biochemical imbalances, or maybe they had a spinal injury that's altering a nerve going to an organ, and that organ is becoming weak. Maybe they have a root canal or something that's affecting their organ, or whatever it is. But it's just, we knew at that time that if someone comes in and says, I'm suffering from this, no, you're not. I mean, that's just what you're feeling right now. It's definitely something that's probably going to be deeper and deeper and deeper.
Now, you just mentioned root canal. So as long as you went into, root canal and dental, where, when you take that full history, if one of your doctors is taking that history on someone and they identify that there's a root canal, at what point do you say that person should have that root canal addressed? So, obviously we're trying to do so many things, and, just going in and, if you're a McDonald's cookie and cupcake eater, we can't just necessarily tell that person, you know what, go have your root canal tooth yanked out, because that could make them even sicker. We need to prime the person for that. But where do you, I guess, where do you put all that dental and oral health into the whole picture?
We put everything that's in the picture post cleansing, because we don't know what's going to change. We've seen a million things change when people have gone through the cleansing. What we're doing is getting to a starting point to where we can really see what's going on with that individual. And then, then you can pick and choose what you want to do. In all honesty, I think talking about every single disease out there that's man-made or degenerative disease, not like Down syndrome or something like that, but every single disease out there, we've seen completely go away.
Yep.
With just the cleansing program. If at best, if everything's not gone by the time they've gone through all of those cleansing and they've changed their health plan and everything, then we've only probably had to have probably a handful of people that have gone through the same thing all over for the second time. So if you go through the intestinal, the liver and gallbladder, the harmful organism, the chemical and heavy metal cleanse, and then you're still suffering, then you just go through the whole thing one more time.
Fantastic.
By that time, you most likely everything is eliminated.
All right. Absolutely fantastic info. And you're right, because, when I'm still active and seeing new patients, and I take that history on people, and as much as I want to say, hey, have your root canal, tooth removed, that's kind of a big deal for people, right? It's like, wait a second, maybe it's a front tooth from an injury. They're worried about obviously how they're going to chew. They're worried about cosmetics and also the expense of that. And then what to do, is it a bridge? Is it an implant? And a lot of people don't want to take those steps if they don't have to. And maybe, so what you're saying is, yeah, I know you definitely agree that root canal teeth are bad and cavitations from old wisdom, teeth removal are bad. And veneers and all these different things. But in lieu of doing all that, hey, let's see what's kind of left over by the time you do this multi-stage cleansing program, and then let's reevaluate and see where you're at, because maybe everybody doesn't need to have that drastic oral surgery, or takes, I know you're familiar with this, like we all are in the natural space, breast implants. A lot of women who spent all that money on breast implants, maybe they don't want to have them removed if they don't need to. So maybe we can preserve that in some of those people.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's when you start talking about the teeth, which is actually a really good question. I think it's definitely important. The teeth are connected everywhere. And I recommend people find a biological dentist. I mean, the thing that we would focus on first is just training the individual to learn a new lifestyle, and it's baby steps too. It's not if you can live by if you're sick and you're debilitated, basically you're living the 30-70 rule. Like, 30% of the time you're doing good, but 70% of the time you're not. We're trying to flip that around to the 80-20 or the 90-10 to where 80% of the time you're eating healthy. I tried going 100%, and for a year and a half, I did nothing but raw food. I drank no alcohol. I meditated for 2 to 4 hours a day, like a Himalayan monk. And for a year and a half, I ended up losing all my friends. I was kind of depressed. I mean, I was super healthy. I was super spiritual, but there's got to be some sort of a balance. If anyone tells you just do 100% of something or just go full blown in, I mean, like, I was never invited. I couldn't go out to eat anymore. There's certain social aspect of us being healthy and communicating and being around friends and being with people and all that if you go to the extreme, it can actually do you damage. And that
let me ask you this. What do you think about the idea where some people talk about the, purposefully putting that kind of stress on the body? No one's going to say, go suck on an exhaust pipe of a diesel engine to stress out your body, but maybe kind of doing different challenges, to your body, whether it's food related, maybe breaking some of your food, zone areas. I mean, I know some people would say, give your body gluten once in a while, wheat or other things that may be food allergenic to stress out your system. I'm trying to think of good examples, yet at the same time, leaving your comfort zone. I'm not sure where I could put that in as far as I know you feel the same way. We're not going to go purposely out and go eat GMO food just because it may put a stress on the body, or we're not going to go drink, some kind of cheap moonshine, made in some, bathtub in order to stress out our body. But, but what do you think about that idea of and I know you're a big fasting guy as well. Yeah. So that kind of, that fast and, fast famine / and then really doing the feast modes and maybe those alternating cycles.
No, I think there definitely is some research and documentation that it's not necessarily a bad thing to put a little bit of stress on your body. That's why I'm big into fasting. And I think probably the most effective thing that people can do, Gandhi, when he was assassinated at 78 years old, he fasted for 1 day every single week. Yep. And once a year, he fasted for 9 days on nothing but water. When they did the autopsy at 78, he had the internal organs of a 40-year-old. So I'm very, very big on fasting, intermittent fasting, and you for heart disease, for being a heart expert. I mean, the benefits are incredible. I mean, look at Dr. Alan Goldhammer, I think is the only person in the world that did clinical research on cardiovascular hypertension. And within 10 or 11 days of water-only fasting, a dramatic results with heart health. High blood pressure was completely gone. They were off all their medications, lipid profiles back to normal. I mean, think about it. 11 days of just drinking water alone. Now, the longest water-only fast I did was 18 days.
Wow.
But right now there's a lot being said about cold therapy as well, taking cold showers, how that shocks the system, going outside, jumping in cold water. I think it's good, but that can go back to your 80-20 or your 90-10. There are limitations. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to eat a bunch of refined sugar. I'm definitely not putting any Splenda, NutraSweet, artificial sweeteners in my body. Yeah. Definitely not putting horrible alcohol. I mean, so, that's kind of my philosophy on that, is that, yes, it is kind of good for the body. That goes back to the situation that we're having now with children, because children are not developing good immune systems because they're washing their hands all the time. There's definitely research out there that shows that we need to, be playing in the dirt and sticking our fingers in our mouth and touching things, and not be so strict about always keeping our bodies super clean and super washed down all the time, because that's actually showing a negative effect. Like, our immune system is not as strong because we keep ourselves so clean all the time.
I know. So when you talk about fasting, what I tell people about fasting is I either tell them once a week to do a 24 or a 36-hour water fast. And I tell them to do it on a weekend. I say, here's how Jack Wolfson does it. I do Saturday night is my last meal, and then wake up Sunday morning. It's water, 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 all, all afternoon, all evening. And then I wake up the next morning, which is Monday morning, and that's where I have a greens juice. And that would be a 36-hour program. And I think that's doable for anybody and everybody. But how do you recommend it? Is there variations to that? How would you recommend it to the first time faster?
That's perfect. I mean, that's perfect. I would recommend doing intermittent fasting on a regular basis, and you can, start with just skipping one meal a day. So you could do from noon one day, you eat till noon the next day. I mean, you can ultimately get it to the point where you're doing about 18-6, so 18 hours out of every day you're fasting, and then 6 hours you're eating. What I do is I don't eat until about 11 or noon every day, and then I stop eating at 6 o'clock at night.
Okay.
Now, that's not every single day. You're
Sure.
just, again, it's the 90-10 rule.
Yep.
I might have a birthday or a dinner party or something, and, I'm not going to, go there and just not have anything. I might just eat a salad or something like that. But 90% of the time, 95% of the time, that's an 18-6 intermittent fasting schedule. So if you look at a lot of the practitioners that were doing work in the 1920s, Arrett and the mucusless diet, and really what we've come to discover is that we only have a certain amount of energy in our body every single day. We talked about the root cause of disease. We talked about the self-healing mechanism. When you talk about that, you have to talk about energy stores in the body, because energy ends up being everything. The ATP production, every cell works. I mean, our body is like churning machine. So why the bowel is the root cause of disease is because, and why people should fast is because one meal, let's say one McDonald's meal, if you just ate that at noon, can take 72 hours of your energy to break that meal down, 24 to 72 hours of your energy. So it's very easy to know that if you have one meal and it takes that much of your energy to break all that stuff down inside your system, that we're at a loss of energy, really. If you want to look at it that way on what's the root cause of all disease, it's that we're losing more energy than we're producing on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. So by cutting that down, Arrett said one small meal a day is the optimum amount that our body can break down. One small meal, a healthy raw meal a day is our energy reserves. That's why so many people are fatigued all the time too. And that's why so many people are on stimulants all the time because they just don't have enough energy. So reduce, if I could just give everybody one big tip, is just reduce the amount of food that you eat.
Right.
If you're still eating 3 meals or 4 meals a day, eat some raw food in there and reduce your portion sizes at least in half. All
right. Now you mentioned about, Dr. Ed, it's been absolutely a pleasure. And thank you so much for being gracious with your time. I know you're super busy at globalhealingcenter.com. Give me a couple words though, as far as, so you mentioned stimulants. Tell me your thoughts on coffee.
I think the jury's still out on coffee. My main concern with coffee is how people are using it and how contaminated it is, because 80% of the coffee supply is heavily sprayed with pesticides and insecticides. I think if you're not drinking certified organic coffee, you don't need to worry about the coffee. You need to worry about what's in the coffee.
Agreed. Sure.
Poisoned by it. I drink coffee. I don't overdo it. It's all about moderation too. I mean, I have a cup of organic coffee. And
how about coffee while you're fasting? Does that coffee water fasting? Yes or no?
True water fasting, if you're going to go past 4 days and you're going to bring your body into autophagy, is what you want, because that's when your regeneration happens. That's when your stem cell production happens. The only thing you can put in your body is water only, because anything that the body senses is any type of food will kick your digestive system back in, because your body thinks that it's going to be getting a meal. And water only fasting is more or less tricking the mind, and it takes 72 hours before you go into ketosis roughly. Autophagy starts around day 4 to day 6, and that's when your body really starts attacking any abnormal cells and really starts breaking anything down that's not supposed to be there. And that's when your stem cells production starts.
So fasting is absolutely essential, obviously, not only for the cardiac patient and for a cardiac cleanse, but that's, like you said, how does the body kill cancer cells? Well, when you're fasting, you're going to preserve the nutrients and all the good things going to the cells that matter. And that is essentially starving off that cancer, because your body is not going to feed that. It's going to use that for the structures and the tissues that are totally necessary.
Well, fasting is the ultimate form of healing that there is. There's nothing out there that me or any scientist has ever found that can, in 72 hours, USC did a study, a water fasting study, and in 72 hours, the immune systems were almost completely regenerated and actually were producing immune stem cells. There's nothing that can do that except the power of the mind, which is a whole nother subject we can get into later, which is extremely powerful, but people just aren't ready for that quite yet. But fasting is the oldest and the most traditional remedy out there. Every single text you can find dating back 5,000 years ago talks about how every civilization would go through a 40-day fast every year, or a 20-day fast or whatever, for regenerating the system and rejuvenating the system. So ultimately, everything is in simplicity, right? So you can heal every single disease known to man with rest, sunlight, rest meaning no stress, rest, sunlight, water, right? So, I mean, how simple is that? We've already been given the tools. It's just that we've been taught in so much fear about not letting, running to the doctor and not having faith in our own body. It's one of the biggest accomplishments the pharmaceutical companies in modern medicine made was the fear of fever, because they knew that all bacteria, all fungus, all viruses, all negative substances would die at a temperature range of 100 to 106.5 roughly. So they knew that they had to put a major campaign in action back a long time ago. This is how they started the whole fear allopathic thing, is they started it with the temperature. They had to convince people that if you started running a fever, you needed to go to the doctor's office immediately to get checked out. And that's the basis of how all pharmaceutical and prescriptions started. Now, I've never, tried to reduce a fever. As a matter of fact, when we were seeing cancer patients in our cancer clinic, we were doing hyperthermia in 1998 into the tumors, heating them up, and they were dying, and the cells were dying. The highest temperature one of my kids ever got to was 106.4.
I know it. I know it.
It's so hard for parents to not allow the fever to get up high, but that's your self-healing mechanism. The body knows how to kill things off.
On the flip side, though, what do most parents do? They're running for the acetaminophen, they're running for the ibuprofen, and the toxicity linked to those, and just acetaminophen, as to how that destroys the liver that we're talking about, and how it damages and decreases the production of glutathione, which is the body's main antioxidant and detoxification molecule made in the liver. And the parents are doing that. It's just, I think that really highlights the point, is that for anyone who's listening to this and you have children or grandchildren, take them to a holistic doctor. That's where you will run into problems. When you go into the medical system, your child is done. If you plug them into the natural health system, they will do very, very well. Dr. Ed, tell me a few words about iodine. I know you're a huge proponent of iodine. I know at the Global Healing Center, you guys have the best iodine product on market. Tell me where we need iodine, where we can get it from food, why we need it in supplementation, and then what are the illnesses we're going after?
Well, looking back at the root cause, you stumble upon things that have been done on purpose, like the attack against natural medicine, the attack against organic foods. And one of the things that we've identified, it's almost a rabbit hole that you start going down and down and down. And when you look at the introduction of the toxic halogens being fluoride, bromine, and chlorine, and the negative effects that those three compounds have on the body and on the thyroid, and since the cardiovascular system, all cells, if they're every single cell in the body has an iodine receptor on it. Iodine was purposely taken out of the salt years ago too. It was put in the salt after the iodine study in Michigan and the goiter study, and it was purposely taken back out and bromine was added. Iodine to me is one of the root causes of the majority of diseases that we have today, because it completely, iodine deficiency can be associated and linked. We've linked it to every single health condition.
Wow.
And nobody is getting enough iodine in the system. There have been multiple studies on iodine and heart disease and a deficiency, and how that is directly related to myocardial arrhythmias and high blood pressure and lipid compatibility. There's been iodine studies with cancer, fibrocystic breast disease, ovarian, polycystic ovary disease, prostate. I mean, you name it, there's a link to iodine deficiency.
Yep.
And so that we stumbled upon all these things. And because there's such a high level of these halogens in the system, and iodine even removes heavy metals at high doses, and there's no fungus, bacteria, virus, or any organism that is that will not die in the presence of iodine. It can develop itself against iodine. Now, the RDA of iodine is like 148 micrograms or something around that range. What we found people need just to maintain every proper homeostasis in the body is somewhere around 5,000 micrograms a day.
Wow.
And women actually need more. Breastfeeding women need more, and children need more. So iodine is one of those, I personally think, and that's what led me to develop a stabilized iodine in a high concentration, which is ultimately became the first certified organic iodine in the country and in the world right now. But iodine is something that, you know, every doctor, let me just say this, once the individual has become cleansed, I recommend everybody go through all those cleanses every single year. But that's where you come in, and that's where the individual practitioners, your natural healthcare practitioner, is the maintenance programs or the programs for strengthening a system. Like, let's say you ran everybody through these cleanses. Then they would go on your heart health program, you know. Then they would go on, you know, whatever you're working with and your maintenance programs and all that. And then once a year, go through the cleansing process. So, you know, doing the fasting, educating people to where they understand. But and I'm not the kind of guy that says, hey, everybody needs to be on bags, because how many times have we seen that, Doc? You have patients come in, they're bringing bags of these horrible supplements into your office. They're on 60, 70 different things every single day.
So as far as iodine from the food, I mean, so to get 5 milligrams of iodine from food, that's an awful lot of seaweed, kelp. I'm a big proponent of eating clean quality shellfish, which of course have iodine. Shrimp, lobster, all has iodine in there. But you tell me some of the best food sources.
Well, you named some of them, but you're just not going to get enough iodine through food sources. And that's why, you know, looking at and working with Dr. Brownstein and his evaluation of over close to 7,000 patients now, over 95%, some crazy number, are iodine deficient. And think about how many people have thyroid conditions. You're just not going to get enough iodine through the food. No matter what you could drink, you could eat cranberries all day long and you're still not going to get enough iodine. And the reason,
given our history of toxicity, our history, you know, it's just like you're right. The people that come in, like, listen, you know, for the first 60 years of your life, you've not been healthy. We got a lot of catching up to do. And that's really where supplements supplement that healthy lifestyle. But obviously you're saying you feel really strongly that out of that bag of, 60, 70 supplements, there's a few in there that you definitely need. And a quality iodine source is going to be one of them.
Definitely. Not a doubt. I mean, that's everybody. I mean, I would just say pretty much everybody and every kid needs to be, and every pet for that matter, needs to be on some sort of iodine supplementation.
Wow. Fantastic. All right. Tell us again, Dr. Group, where do we find you? Where do we get all this fantastic, follow-up when people come to find you? Where do we go?
Well, you can go to globalhealingcenter.com. We have tons of information on the site. You can go to our YouTube channel, Global Healing Center, YouTube, Facebook, Global Healing Center. And we have full trained staff. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions, lead you in the right direction. I mean, it's all about helping people. That's what our mission is. We really want to let people know how how they can change their life, how to identify the chemicals and the toxins that are surrounding them, how to start eliminating those from their diet, from their life, and how to reactivate their body's own self-healing mechanism.
Dr. Group, I got to tell you, and I don't mean to sound condescending in any way, and I've been around some of the smartest doctors in the world that most people would consider the smartest docs, right? I've been to and worked at the Cleveland Clinic, and I've worked at the big hospitals in Chicago and out here in Arizona. Those people that are commonly considered the best doctors, they do not even hold a candle to what you've shared with us, to your knowledge base. And I appreciate you being on. It's so refreshing to talk to people like you, leaders like you, the knowledge that you have. If we'll just continue to awaken the world of wellness, your website, great information. And once again, thank you so much. I learned a lot in this. I know our audience is going to learn a lot as well. So thank you again.
Well, thanks for having me on. Thanks for all the people that you're helping and all the things that you're doing as well. I really appreciate it.
You got it, my friend.